You know those videos where some enterprising YouTuber takes all the cutscenes from a video game and edits them together to make a movie? Except it's not really a movie because there's massive gaps where the gameplay would be, so everything is built on in-the-moment randomness and it makes no sense. That's what Warcraft is. Hi, I'm Alex from WhatCulture.com, and here are 4 ups and 6 downs from Warcraft the beginning. For its many, many faults, which I'll get into, don't worry, Warcraft is still from Duncan Jones, who is such a good director with Moon and source code under his belt that it's not even worth reminding you that he's got a famous dad anymore. That's how good he is. And while he's really, really overwhelmed by working on a massive blockbuster here, he does still leave his stamp on the project. The world of Azeroth looks gorgeous and distinct, and despite being quite limited sets, he's got these great sweeping establishing shots that make the world feel really big. The fighting's quite good as well. The action itself isn't great, but he puts it in a unique location each time, so you get a sense that this is a lived-in world, just about. The basic story of Warcraft is one of orcs versus humans, and it would be very, very easy to just focus on the human side of the story. We're humans, we're selfish, the orcs. But it doesn't do that. Instead, we actually spend probably more time orking about. We open on the orc homeworld and seeing them invade the human world, and the whole plot is basically driven by one of the orcs' moral confusion. There's some cool ideas used to show this as well and develop it. The action is varied, so the humans are really sort of tactful and the orcs are really brutish, and they do the Hunt for Red October thing with the Orcish and English, where they flip the language about and even jump it within a scene, which is a really cool audio effect. The orcs are still the bad guys, of course, but the film makes it not as black and white as so many other fantasy films tend to make it out to be. A key part of all that duality is the strength of the orc motion capture. You don't for a second think the humans are just flapping about on a green screen play acting, and that's in part to the effect, but a big reason is the amazing acting and capture techniques used on these orcs. Despite being quite caricaturish in design, the expression on these giant beasts is incredible. It helps that they're all led by Toby Kebbell, who is basically next in line to the throne of mocap at this point. His Durotan is great, it's emotive and quite nuanced. For the film at least. There are some other issues with the orcs which I'll get into in downs, but you know, mocap wise, solid work. It's a rule in movies based on games that there has to be some contrived plot point that fits the game mechanic. So in Angry Birds, you've got the birds throwing themselves to pigs, Mario has all that, and Battleship has that really weird grid bit. Warcraft predictably does the same, but it actually works. You get this great shot where you see the orcs sacking all the human villagers from above, just like you're playing the game, and the way that the magic is shown and the hulking figures feels like it's directly lifted out of the game. And it's not distracting, it's not going, look, we're a video game movie, look at us. It fits the world that's established while honouring the medium. It's pretty good. It's a shame the same can't be said for the other big thing that comes from the games. Downs. There's quite a few of these. Woe betide you if you have never played World of Warcraft, because Warcraft the movie is basically impenetrable. We've gone back to the early days of the mythology, and yet there's still so much background that's so dense that you can never get into those beautifully realised worlds. Nothing is explained. I don't want to just point at Lord of the Rings and go, do that, but do that! It's a great textbook example of how to set up a mythology first, then go into the more personal story. Warcraft does none of that, and it really hurts the entire movie. There's nothing wrong with inserting stuff for the fans, like Civil War is entirely that, but you need to provide some form of in for people who've never played the games. I've never played the game, and I was lost. Look, there's nothing wrong with a movie respecting fans of the franchise and putting things in for their benefit, that's fine. Civil War is basically that. But you need to have an in, you need to provide a way for people who don't understand what's going on, people who haven't played a game of World of Warcraft, who can actually go and enjoy the film. Warcraft doesn't do that. Okay, so you're completely overwhelmed by the world we're in, but maybe you can just plug your ears to all the mythology and just enjoy the plot at hand. Afraid not. The actual broad scope of the plot isn't that difficult to follow because it's mostly motivated by character decisions rather than these big, greater powers. But because the characters are so uninteresting and the decisions they make so confusing, you're just lost again. You'll spend entire action sequences going, but how do Fells and Guardians mean that this orc is doing that to that huge? Just go f***. There were entire scenes I had no idea what was going on, and I challenge you to say any different. With the next point, I'm bringing in some contextual stuff. I don't normally like to do this because it sort of undermines the movie itself, but it's quite important here. Duncan Jones has said a few times that he cut about 40 minutes out of the film to make it ready for release. And it really, really shows. There's some big pacing issues that affect the whole film, but where it really, really hurts is the orcs. Remember all that good stuff I said about the orcs in Up? Well, this basically nullifies it. The characters just become incredibly undefined. There's one good character who manages to betray people in consecutive scenes that makes no sense, and the main orc just disappears for a vast stretch. I was amazed that the human characters could even remember who they held grudges against. The amazing mocap becomes worthless because they're also indistinguishable because you don't know who they are. Unexpected Up. Warcraft doesn't have a half-baked Jesus metaphor that is completely unrelated to the plot and exists only for the most baseless symbolism. Contrasting down, it does a Moses one instead. What makes this so disappointing as a Duncan Jones film is how much it wallows in convention. His first two movies were great. They had fun in the genres they were in, but they felt fresh as well. This one is like every other fantasy movie you've ever seen before. The dialogue reads like it's from a video game script from 2005. It's all old-timey words with the odd bit of mythology thrown in, and the actors don't seem like they know what they're actually saying. And it's incredibly oddly structured with lots of cheap narrative tricks popping up that you think Duncan Jones would be above. A character has a big twist, and then all of a sudden they're paying off the twist in the next scene. We found out that characters are related in the most matter-of-fact dialogue. It's an absolute mess. You could blame some of that on the editing if you really want to, but that doesn't excuse it all. It's a mess of a script. It's kind of ironic the film's been released internationally as Warcraft: The Beginning. Not just because this one is definitely not going to get a sequel, but because the film itself doesn't really know how to end. Like many recent blockbusters, the final battle comes completely out of nowhere just because the plot demands it, but here it feels particularly ugly. Without going into spoilers, it manages to break its own rules consistently, both mythology and plot. It introduces random key concepts on the fly, and it loses an entire army that is never brought up again. If you are not 100% on board with this film, and I really can't see how you could be, when that final act comes around, you're just going to watch it in absolute disbelief. They released this as a full, complete movie. Don't know what to say. I really wanted this one to be good. It's Duncan Jones. We've not had a good high fantasy movie since 2003, and 2016's not exactly been a banner year for blockbusters. But most of all, we're still waiting for that good video game movie. Warcraft seems to try, but it just fails. We had 3 contenders for a good video game movie coming into this year, and the way it's shaping up, it looks like Angry Birds, which is not terrible, its plot's garbage, but it's kind of fun, is going to be the best one. Angry Birds. It's up to you, Fassbender. So that was Warcraft. What did you think? Let us know down in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more great film content, and you can follow me on Twitter here.